the Foundation for Human Rights and the Nelson Mandela Foundation have come together to bring South Africans a documentary series that looks into the 1996 Truth and Reconciliation Commission process. Truth Be Told explores transgenerational trauma and reconciliation themes. For more on this conversation, we're now joined in studio by the documentary series director, Enver Samuels, as well as actor Thabang Mabuza. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I guess let's start with you, Mr. Samuels. Why the need for this kind of documentary?
I think following up on the documentary that I did on Dalsy September called Murder in Paris, and the previous one on Ahmed Timol, I felt the need to tell these type of stories where the focus is on unsung heroes and heroines, and not the main players like Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and Sisulu, and Biko. Obviously all important people in our history, but the lesser known figures seem to fascinate me even more.
And I mean, when we look at our history as well, it's so rich. There's so many stories that can be told. And now also to just kind of also zone in on the many, many unsung heroes as well. What kind of reception do you get when you aren't talking about the most famous people, the Nelson Mandelas or, Tambos and the Bikos?
Yes. So sometimes when I do screenings, then I ask a full room, how many of you know Dalsy September? How many of you know Pila Porsche and Dwandwe? And you'd almost universally get hardly any hands going up. And then at the end of the screening, then they'll say, but why don't I know about this person? And I think that's a common reaction. And I think it's about time that we recognize, as we celebrate 30 years of democracy, those people that paid the ultimate price, because we enjoy our democracy now because of them.
And that's absolutely true, Enver. And for you, Thabang, to be involved in such a project, what significance does that have? I mean, how much meaning does it give to you?
Because the story is about my mother, Pila Porsche and Dwandwe, who kind of was abducted and killed when I was about 3 months old. So it's a personal story for me, and I think in the series, we kind of run through, the trauma or the process that post that I kind of personally, through my eyes, not knowing my mother, and how I got to know about my mother through the TRC, when it happened in 1998, 1997, 1998, and how I got to know about my maternal part of side of my family.
But also, it must be quite emotional for you, an emotional journey, it's a personal one.
No, most definitely. And I think, I think I speak about quite a lot in terms of because she wasn't there, in my growing up and only finding out later about her story and, her eventual, being resumed from the grave, as you'll see in the documentary. It's me also throughout the years trying to understand what type of person she was, because I never got that opportunity, through her friends, family, people who knew her, people who were in jail with her, and during, during exile. So those stories trying to just paint a picture of, what type of person she was, and kind of like, depicting the loss that I kind of had with her not being present in my life.
And also the ability now to share that kind of loss as well, because, of course, to the nation, she fought, she was a hero, but to you, you have lost your mother.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think I speak about, me not necessarily opening up even to my close friends about it for the longest time, because it's a part of me that, it touches, part of my heart, which is not something I'll just easily speak about. But then, through this documentary, giving me the opportunity to actually tell a story, just advocating for actually all the female, heroines and heroes who are part of the struggle, who, if Enver spoke about, the Mandelas and Mbeki, it's always been a male-dominated story, and then just giving the voice to all the female warriors who kind of basically were in the trenches with the men, So yeah, so that for me is also an important part of the story that we're kind of telling.
So we are going to be getting educated about your mom, but you were also learning on this journey.
Correct. No, 100%. And it's been, throughout all my years, almost 36 years, where the older I got, the more I kind of, understood what kind of happened, versus, me growing up, my father would have, been, the one kind of protecting me, through that, up until I think when he thought, it's the right time now to kind of tell you and take you through the journey. So even there's certain things, even on the documentary, where it was quite new to me as well. So yeah, it's just going through that journey.
And for you, Enver, of course, you've got a history with telling such stories as well. How difficult is it to find these characters? Some of these secrets are really buried, I think, even deeper than 6 feet.
Yes, exactly. It's not an easy journey, but it takes a lot of sort of digging, and I seem to enjoy that aspect of making documentaries, the research, spending hours going through the TRC archive, not hours, spending days and weeks going through that archive and finding the correct archive that matches Pila's story, right up to the unearthing of her bones, a sniffer dog, locating the grave. You get that sort of raw, visceral images, but it speaks to the time. We seem to forget about that time, and it's not that long ago. We're not talking about half a century ago. We're talking about, like, the 80s. And so it's been a difficult journey, but it's been a rewarding journey at the same time, because I think the families are getting the opportunity to speak and to let either their mother or their father's story be told.
Do you find that also within this process, you are spending weeks on end going back into history, looking at we remember those TRC hearings. They were gruesome. They were emotionally, highly charged.
Yes.
Almost impossible to get through one without a box of tissues. How is that on you personally? The footage is harrowing, as you say.
And I think in a lot of viewers it will spark that memory. They'll remember the aha moment. Yeah. I remember that. It's a journey of trying to keep a balance, but I've hardly got there. But for me, it's not so much about me. It's about the stories I'm telling. So I leave my emotions aside and try and focus on doing the best I can do to tell that story about the families. It's a huge responsibility, because I want to ensure that the story is told that in a way that the families would be happy with. So it does put an enormous burden on one's shoulders, but I think, from the launch we had on Thursday at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, that if anything, that showed that the response was we're on the right track, and Thabang's episode with his mum is aptly called The Breastfeeding Warrior.
What a beautiful title. It certainly is. Now, the documentary is also in collaboration with you mentioned the Nelson Mandela Foundation, but also the Foundation for Human Rights, whose executive said something quite interesting, Dr. Zaid Kimi. He described the TRC as a betrayal, and I quote, as a cancer that lurks at the heart of South Africa's democracy. Is that why you felt it so important to go back to this particular piece of history, the TRC?
Yes. Yes, because it was an important moment in South Africa's history, and it was a groundbreaking process, the TRC. It gave every family the ability to come and speak and share their pain, and it did that. But when it was supposed to move forward with prosecutions and things like that, then I think it's become a betrayal for the families. But ironically, with this story, the reason why they found Pila Posha's remains was because the security police involved in a killing went to the TRC in looking for amnesty, and then told the family, or told the TRC commission, that this is where the bones are located. This is what we did to her. And so Thabang's family, after almost a decade, were finally able to locate her bones and bury her almost 10 years later.
You know, Thabang, earlier Enver was mentioning just like, you know, how this is not far off history.
Yeah.
It's quite recent history still. Now, your family has been directly impacted. When you hear these kinds of testimonies, when you go back and listen to the kinds of testimonies that speak of, you know, how your mother's final days, unfortunately, as a family, how does that make you feel?
It's a sense of closure. You know, I think to Enver's point, we got to know about her story or where she was buried because of the TRC. As horrifying as, you know, what came out of it, you know, but it was a level of closure that we got to rebury her bones. But I mean, if you know, you go through the documentary and you see them showing, you know, the bullet wound on in her skull. You know, it's to any person, any human nature, that's you know, horrific to say the least. But I think to my direct benefit, I think I got to know my mother's side of the family because of that. Whereas before it was just, you know, my paternal side of the family. So it brought some sort of, you know, solace that I got to interact and mend like relationships with that part of it, right? But in itself, it's definitely something that, you know, that I personally think about pretty much all the time. Yeah. But you still need to manage how I'm still able to carry on living, you know, the life. You know, just recognizing the freedom that, you know, they brought to myself and other people in the country. So, you know, when they usually ask me, so what do you think about, you know, the TRC? Yes, we definitely feel that not the entire truth was told there, but to me personally, that half-truth brought some level of closure.
A lot of the criticism, a lot of the time about the TRC is just the lack of punitive measures, the lack of prosecutions as well. How do you feel about that in this case as well?
No, definitely. I mean, the person who participated in murdering is still alive. Still, you know, he walked free post that, because that was the implication that if you tell the, you know, the truth, you'll be able to get amnesty. But, you know, for the survivors or the families thereof, you know, it's something that they deal with every single day. So it's not a single event. It carries on with you, and you carry it in whatever you do. So it's definitely something that, you know, every day you just have to deal with it somehow and carry on, but knowing that they're just roaming on the streets. I personally don't try and think about, you know, that type of thing, because for my own benefit and my sanity in being able to carry on, I focus on effectively. I talk about something that I can control, and that's every single day, and, you know, trying the best that I can, given the trauma that, you know, this event kind of came with.
And, you know, Enver, there's many Thabangs out there as well. Do you think, you know, post this docu-series that you should be continuing with this kind of history being told? Because, you know, to Thabang's point as well, you know, you go and you state your story, and you get amnesty. And that's where it ends. And for many people, that may not be enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes, precisely. I mean, there were over 20,000 cases that came before the TRC in terms of the families telling their stories. So, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of stories to tell. With the budget, yes, we can do it, but at the moment we're concentrating on the 6. I think there should be a spin-off from it because of the impact it will have, and I'm sure it's going to have an impact. I mean, you know, there's an example where Thabang's aunt, Lungiswa, says in this episode, The Breastfeeding Warrior, she says, you know, I'm sure at one point his mum, Portia Pila, was just telling them while being interrogated that I have a baby. you know, let me go. And she said she probably cried for him, you know. So what it allows the viewer is to see, because it's not about it's not made for ANC veterans can go so viva ANC. Through the child's eyes, it's showing you this. It's showing you live transgenerational trauma. Because also what it does, that visual of you're only 3 months old, and that's why I love the title as well, the breastfeeding warrior. That's a time that your mother was obviously still breastfeeding you, and that's a catch-22 to be put in, you know, to say I've got a new baby, a newborn baby, or do I go fight for my country? And then she obviously chose to make the ultimate sacrifice. Tell us a bit more about the other series as well, outside of the breastfeeding warrior. What so there are 6. The second episode is called Pathways to Light, and the story is about Becky Sizwe Mlangeni, a human rights lawyer, who was killed in the most horrific manner by a Walkman that was designed to explode when he put it on his head. So that's the level of sophistication in terms of the death or killing machine that we were dealing with during the height of apartheid. But it's another beautiful story because the protagonist, Mandla, is a jazz musician. Mandla Malangeni is a fantastic jazz musician, and he uses the trumpet to heal. He uses the trumpet to speak to his father, and that episode is called Pathways to Light because he's trying to come out of the darkness into the light. Episode 3 is about Ntombi Kubeka, similar to Pila Portia's story, abducted, tortured, killed, bones not found for many years, family not knowing where she was. There's the story of Matthews Mabalani, thrown out of the 10th floor of John Foster Square, similar to Amatimo's story in 77. Their father lived up to 96, waiting for answers and justice. He passed away. 2 brothers have passed away with no answers. And that story goes on and on and on of how the families are waiting. I distinctly remember during the Amatimo trial, Lashma Balani, the brother that passed away, coming every day to the Amatimo trial, the reopened inquest. I'm hoping this is going to be what happens to our family, that we get the opportunity, because I'm seeing this happen. So surely it's going to happen for us. And they're still waiting, and I think it's about 3 years later.
There's so many. And just before I let you go, where can people access these documentaries?
So it's going to be on the national broadcaster. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You're doing incredible work, and you know you're a child of a warrior.
Yep.
So, and thank you so much for sharing her with us and your story with us. Really appreciate it. All the best to you both.